In 1969, Nissan unveiled the Fairlady Z, known basically everywhere but Japan as the Datsun 240Z. The car was an instant classic. With sleek, curvy body lines and exciting handling, these cars are highly collectible and are currently rising in value. The 240Z was named after its 2.4-liter inline-six engine. Over the next decade, Nissan would release the 260Z and the 280Z on the same chassis, each of which are also named after their engine size. While the 240Z remains the most desirable of the three, all models of the first generation Z-Car are sought-after classics, and it doesn't look like that's changing anytime soon. This is the left pedal, and here's the details on the first generation Nissan Z. The Z was a pretty popular car during the 70s. The body lines were inspired by the sleek design of European sports cars, namely the Jaguar E-Type and the Ferrari GTO. The goal was to offer a driver-focused, good-looking vehicle at a significantly lower rate than its European counterparts. The iconic design of the car was not only for looks. It had a near 50-50 weight ratio, and being a two-seater, it had a lot of room in the back. It was small, but it had lots of space to take two people on a road trip. The interior was sport-focused and really pretty simple. It was equipped with deep-set gauges and a signature 3 additional gauges in the center of the dash, a tradition that Nissan Z-Cars have kept to this day. The Western 240Z was named after its engine, the Nissan L24, a single overhead cam, inline-six engine displacing 2.4 liters. There is some confusion when it comes to the horsepower of these old Datsuns. Back in the day, they measured the engine's gross horsepower, rather than the more modern, standardized net horsepower rating. Gross horsepower means that engine horsepower was measured in perfect conditions without any accessories attached. To measure net horsepower, an engine is set in perfect condition with accessories and exhaust on it. The widely accepted horsepower rating for the 240Z's L24 is 151 horses at 6,000 RPM, with wheel horsepower realistically being closer to 130. These numbers don't sound too hot today, but at the time, the car was known as a performer in the corners. According to original road tests in 1970, the 240Z accelerated from 0 to 60 miles per hour at an average of 8.3 seconds. It had a quarter-mile time of 17.1 seconds at 84 miles an hour. The car's braking distance was pretty good for the time, dropping from 60 miles an hour to 0 in 160 feet. That's still not even bad today. The 240Z ran a 4-speed manual transmission and later offered a 3-speed automatic. The Europeans got a 5-speed manual option, but it wasn't originally offered in the USA. After unveiling the 240Z in 1969, Nissan would produce them through 1973. Its successor, the 260Z, looked almost identical to the untrained observer. On the outside, the car had slightly different taillights, updated badges, and the later model American 260Zs were unfortunately equipped with massive safety bumpers due to government regulations. The 260Z was about 300 pounds heavier than the 240Z, but it did have a slightly larger engine. The 2.6-liter L26 did what it could to save the car's performance, and it still made for a great driver. 1974 was also the first year that the 2+2 became available. While the 2+2 models were longer and heavier, they did allow buyers to trade some of their performance and hatch space for back seats. These are typically cheaper than the 2-seater coupes today, but they have a cult-like following and they make a great base for an old-school performance project. After only 18 months of the 260Z, the last S30, the 280Z, was released. The 280Z once again was named after its engine. This time it was the L28E. The 2.8-liter single overhead cam engine had one big upgrade that was new to the Z series. It was fuel injected. The new L28 offered similar horsepower, running 149 horses at 5,600 RPM, but it did make more torque, 163 pound-feet at 4,400 RPM. All three of the S30 models sat on the same basic suspension design, using a McPherson-type strut setup in the front and Chapman struts in the rear. The 280Z was even heavier and clunkier than the old models. Despite the added displacement, the 280 was outperformed by the lighter 240 in a lot of ways. The 280Z did, however, finally offer a 5-speed manual in the United States, giving American Z owners something that the European models had offered for years. The S30 was a pretty small vehicle, especially for the American market. The 240Z had a wheelbase of just over 90 inches, a height of 50.5 inches, and a length of only 163 inches. Being that they were built on the same chassis, the dimensions of the 260Z and 280Z are, for the most part, the same. However, over the course of the decade, American models would be equipped with larger and bulkier bumpers, adding a foot to the overall length of the vehicles. The cars would also gain weight over the decade. Nissan advertised the original 240Z's curb weight at less than 2,300 pounds. By the final year of the 280Z, even the two-seater was tipping the scales at over 2,800 pounds. It is worth noting that the exact weight of each vehicle is variable depending on the options in the car. Nissan had to throw in the safety bumpers and emissions control to deal with ever-increasing government regulations. The changes that the S30 had to adapt to play a part in why the original 240Zs are so valuable today. The first generation Z-Car is one of the most iconic Japanese cars ever built. Unfortunately, it arrived just in time for an oil crisis and consistently rising emission standards. The 240Z, 260Z, and 280Z each face different obstacles in their attempt to break into the market. Despite Nissan's efforts, the original 240Z is still considered the best driver of the three. With its lightweight design and raw driving experience, it remains a highly collectible car for fans of old school rides. Fortunately for Z-Car enthusiasts, the relatively cheaper 260Z and 280Z are still fantastic rides, and they don't feel out of place on anyone's list of dream cars. Thank you guys for watching. Over the next 7 weeks, we're doing a whole series on the evolution of the Nissan Z, so stay tuned, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm Soda Pop, this is The Left Pedal, and I will see you next time.